Hello, everybody. This is Empowering Democracy. I'm your host, Joe Firestone. This is my second update for today. It's called Bass Victorious. Are we? So, we will see what that means in just a moment, or just a few moments anyway. What I would like to do, I think, first is to go over uh, some results that occurred today in the House races. So I'm going to start off by sharing not the item on Karen Bass, but the live blog from 538 on the uncalled races of the 2022 elections. There was some important stuff on there today. Not as much as on other days. We can easily review it. First of all, Nathaniel Rakich on November 17th at 10:02 a.m. With last night's updates from Arizona, the Associated Press is now projecting that Proposition 309 has failed, 50.4% to 49.6%. If it had passed, it would have required people in Arizona who vote by mail to provide a voter identification number and a date of birth, and it also would have eliminated the current exception to showing a photo ID when you vote in person. If you don't have a photo ID, you may show two pieces of non-photo ID. Sounds reasonably sensible. But Proposition 309 failed. So that's not going to change. That's still going to be in place. A good result, I think. At 10:03 a.m., Nathaniel Rakich posted the following: Republicans have also held on to control of the Arizona state legislature. Not such good news, but just barely. In the state Senate, Republicans have won 16 seats to Democrats' 13. One seat is undecided, but will likely go to Democrats. And in the state House, the Republicans have won 30 out of 60 seats, but one of the undecided races is between two Republicans, so they will end with 31 seats. So Republicans have control of both houses, but rather narrowly. Things almost went over to the Democratic side, but they did not. But it does mean Katie Hobbs is going to have to deal with a legislature controlled by the opposition party. And another from Nathaniel Rakich at 10:03 a.m. He says, and the race for Arizona Attorney General remains extremely tight. Democrat Chris Mays leads Republican Abe Hamadeh, who's a Trumpist, by the way, and probably a pretty dangerous one, by all of 711 votes. That's 50.01% to 49.99%. As many as 17,000 ballots are left to tabulate, but many of them are provisional ballots, so they may not be valid. But it looks like this will go to a recount either way, because it is so close. And this is from Jeffrey Skelly at 10:49 a.m. A lot of activity right in the morning within a few minutes, right? Last night we got some updated vote totals in two California House races that have yet to be projected. In the Central Valley Base 13th District, Republican Adam Duarte now leads Democrat Adam Gray by less than a percentage point, 50.4% to 49.6%, with 69% of the expected vote reporting. ABC News estimates that around 11,000 votes are left to count, which makes Duarte a favorite because Gray needs to win nearly 55% of those remaining votes to overtake the Republican. About half that vote is in Democratic-leaning Stanislaus County, so perhaps that's a lifeline for Gray's chances, but you'd rather be Duarte at this point. Democrats got better news in the Orange County-based 47th District, where Democratic Representative Katie Porter now leads Republican Scott Baugh by almost 3 points, 51.4% to 48.6%. We don't have a specific estimate of the outstanding votes from Orange County that still need to be counted, but based on what we have and the fact that 88% of the expected vote has reported, there could be 30 to 40,000 votes left to count. If so, Baugh may need to win somewhere around 60% of those votes to catch Porter, which may be asking too much. So basically, Jeffrey Skelly is saying he thinks that Katie Porter is going to win that one, and he thinks Duarte is going to win the 13th district. So those are some likelihoods anyway. No projections on those two races yet. And this is from Jeffrey Skelly as well at 1:12 p.m. This is probably the most important one of all the rest, except for the part that says that Katie Porter will probably win. In the wake of Republicans taking narrow control of the House, Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi announced she would not seek by re-election to Democratic leadership in the next Congress. This means House Democrats will have a new leader for the first time in 20 years, as Pelosi has led it since the 108th Congress began in 2003. She added that she would continue to represent her San Francisco-based district, which is interesting because it would be somewhat unusual for a former speaker who no longer serves in leadership to stick around. For instance, when Democrats won back the House in 2006, Republican Representative Dennis Hastert resigned in November of 2007 after not continuing in leadership. As for who will succeed Pelosi, we know it won't be Maryland Representative Steny Hoyer. That too is excellent news. Who has held the second ranking post in the Democratic House leadership throughout the Pelosi era. He announced he would also step aside, but that he too planned to remain in Congress. New York Representative Hakeem Jeffries appears a likely choice to succeed Pelosi, although we have not yet heard post-Pelosi plans from South Carolina, Jim Clyburn, who is the other Democratic leader of note. He, by the way, if you don't know, was the whip, the House whip. He actually the Democratic whip, not the House whip, Democratic whip. He previously said he planned to, quote, stay in leadership, unquote, if Pelosi did step down, but that he wouldn't run for the top post. meaning I think that he would not run for the minority leader position. So that's news. And of course, it's very important news. Uh, Things are kind of a little different there because let's say the Democrats had won in Congress and Pelosi had also decided she was going to run for the speakership. Then we would have to wait for the speaker election of January 3rd to find out if she was going to be speaker. And it would be possible to block her by using a few votes to get her total under 200, okay, and 18. It would be possible to block her, okay, on January 3rd. But the kinds of elections we're talking about now are inter-party elections. And as far as I know, they do not require a majority vote of the party reps. Okay, and that applies whether we're talking about the majority party or the minority party. In this case, at this point, we are talking about who's going to be the minority leader of the Democrats, who's going to run for that spot. Now, Hakeem Jeffries has said he's going to run for that spot, which means that in 2 years, if the Democrats took back the House, he would then be in line for the speakership. So there might be a fight then for the minority leader position right now. Of course, the current, well, I should point out that the leader position right now for the majority is held by Steny Hoyer. Okay. Speaker Pelosi is technically the leader of the House, the whole House, both parties. So that's different from the situation in the Senate, where the leader of the Senate, the former leader of the Senate, is the vice president. And the majority leader, who actually calls all the shots, or most of the shots anyway, is the leader of the majority party. And that leader was elected just yesterday, and that again is Mitch McConnell. So we've had a decision on that. Interesting question is, if we're looking at who's going to be the minority leader, I think that election still has to take place. And I don't know if that election requires a majority vote of the party caucus. It may require only a plurality vote, which is important because let's say we have 4 or 5 people who are running for that post, okay, of the minority leader. Say there's competition to Hakeem Jeffries, okay, at this point, and people don't want to agree on him because they know it means that he would likely be the speaker in 2 years if Dems actually got control of the House again. So people who might not want to see that happen are not in a position to use, let's say, a specific number of votes that would be a majority of the party. it may be a plurality election. And Hakeem Jeffries might have a pretty good chance to actually get a plurality of the votes in the Democratic Party and become the party leader on those grounds. Whereas if he were actually running for the speakership now, he would have to get 218 votes, which is a majority of the 435 votes that are in the House. It's very possible that Hakeem Jeffries this year could never get 218 votes, even had the Democrats actually won this election. But he may be able to win with a plurality. I don't know how those rules actually work. I'm just raising the question. There are many possible competitors to Hakeem Jeffries. How many of them are going to run? I don't know. I, of course, would like to see Debbie Dingell run. I would like to see I'd like to see Rosa DeLauro also run. I'd like to see Jamie Raskin run. I'd like to see Katie Porter run if she's successful. I don't know which of these people would be able to unite the caucus behind them. That's my worry. I'd like to see someone from the center of the caucus actually win. I think Hakeem Jeffries is too centrist for that, which places him at the right of the caucus, on the right of the caucus. Okay. I don't think someone who's on the left of the caucus could possibly win. I don't think that's in the cards. I think probably the closest we might be able to get to someone who's left of the caucus actually winning might be Katie Porter or Debbie Dingell, okay, or Rosa DeLauro. But from the point of view I have, they are three who are more in the center of the caucus. So some people might consider Katie Porter to be a little too left wing as well. So those are my thoughts on that particular subject. Let me move on. There was another microblog. Yes, at 3:29 p.m. We had something from Rakich again. Okay, Nathaniel Rakich. Maricopa County, Arizona just surprised us with an early vote update. And Republican Abraham Hamadah gained a few votes on Democrat Chris Mays in the race for Attorney General. Mays now leads by just 427 votes out of 2.5 million votes cast. That's a very, very tight race. That's certainly within recount territory. So we're just going to have to see what happens on that score. Okay, now on to Karen Bass. and her victory in Los Angeles. Now, isn't a knock. What I have to say isn't a knock on Karen Bass. Karen Bass has been among my favorite Congress people and was very much to the left of the caucus. I was pleased when she was being considered as a vice presidential candidate because I thought she was probably the most lefty person we could possibly get for vice president if Biden had picked her. Instead, he picked Harris. Wouldn't you know it, Biden would pick Harris in a situation like that. Believe me, Karen Bass wouldn't have been nearly as much of a dud as Harris has been. She's been. When the subject comes up of maybe Biden will stay only for a first term, okay, and who can be his successor? In Democratic ranks, there is absolutely no enthusiasm for Katherine Harris. None at all. And of course, there's almost no enthusiasm for Pete Buttigieg either, which are the two most often mentioned names these days. They would easily be swept aside by the radical Republicans, I think. Whereas Karen Bass would certainly not have been. Karen Bass is quite a fighter. So here, in this article, let's go through this article, quote, the left beat the money, unquote, as Karen Bass defeats billionaire to become LA mayor. Now, I would have been entirely ecstatic about that if Karen Bass had not been taking any big money for this particular campaign, and if our movement had been successful, and if everybody were voting against all the big money candidates, then I would have been totally ecstatic if Karen Bass had won, because the left would have beaten the big money because everybody was voting against the big money. So that would have been great. But in this situation, the left beat the big money only because some of the big money was on the side of the left. Let's go through the article. This is by Brett Wilkins, staff member of Common Dreams, on November 17th. And Brett said, Karen Bass on Wednesday was projected the winner of the Los Angeles mayoral race, defeating billionaire Rick Caruso, a former Republican who outspent a Democratic U.S. Congresswoman by 11-1, while enlisting the aid of Hollywood A-listers, including Snoop Dogg, Gwyneth Paltrow, and Kim Kardashian. Boy, what recommendations. Bass, who will become the first woman to lead the country's second largest city, was leading Caruso by more than 46,000 votes on Wednesday afternoon, with just under 75% of ballots counted, according to the Los Angeles Times. Quote, our campaign was people-powered by thousands of volunteers, sending a message that we are committed to solutions for homelessness, public safety, and affordability in every neighborhood and for every community. The 69-year-old former state assembly speaker and six-term congresswoman tweeted earlier this week, Caruso spent more than $100 million of his own money on his failed campaign, which tried to capitalize on Angelino's frustrations with crime and homelessness. The 63-year-old had promised to hire a record number of police officers and to find temporary housing for 30,000 of the city's nearly 70,000 unhoused residents in his first 300 days in office. Representative Ilhan Omar, Democrat of Minnesota, called Bass's victory the best news of the week, unquote. John Nichols, a well-known writer for The Nation, said Karen Bass is the mayor-elect of Los Angeles. The left beat the money. He was the first one to say that. And did I share this as I should have done? I hope so. Yes, I did. No, I'm not sure I did. So, okay, let me get that in there. The left beat the money. What is going on here? It's not. Oh, there it is. It's all right. Now, before I say anything more, oh no, I've already shared this on Facebook, so I'm fine. So, getting back to the article, the left beat the money, the projected winner, Los Angeles mayor, Karen Bass. That's a picture of her. As you see, she has a very friendly smile. This was on November 16th. That tweet occurred. As someone who has both worked closely and admired her from afar, I know she will be leading the city that raised her with love and compassion, unquote. Said Ilhan Omar. And quote again, congratulations, Karen Bass. I'm going to miss you enormously, but I will forever be grateful for your membership. I think that was her membership in Congress, unquote. U.S. Senator Alex Padilla, I should say, of Democrat of California, also congratulated Bass, hailing her, quote, hard-earned and historic victory, unquote. Women's March Action issued a statement cheering Bass' election, calling her, quote, one of us, unquote. And quote again, she will fight for women's rights, build bridges, help house the homeless, secure federal dollars, and bring fresh energy to City Hall, unquote. The group said, and quote again, she's going to be a great role model and will make us proud, unquote. Bass will take office during turbulent times in the California city of 4 million people beset by rampant inequality and its manifestations, including rising crime and an unhoused population greater than the combined populations of two neighboring cities, specifically Beverly Hills and West Hollywood. The Los Angeles Times reports, born in South LA, raised in the Venice Fairfax area, now a longtime resident of Baldwin Hills, Bass has spent her life deeply rooted in Los Angeles. Her social justice ideals have taken her from a county emergency room to nonprofit leadership and ultimately the halls of power in Sacramento and Washington, D.C. The journey includes 8 trips to Cuba as a member and organizer of the Venceremos Brigade, a work and culture program founded by the campus activist group Students for a Democratic Society, and Fidel Castro's government to promote solidarity with the Cuban Revolution. At this point, I suppose that I should mention that I was a member of Students for a Democratic Society at Cornell University as well in 1959 and in 1960. While Caruso's impressive lineup of celebrity endorsements drew national attention, Bass had plenty of Hollywood backers too, including Ariana Grande, Norman Lear, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, J.J. Abrams, Yvette Nicole Brown, Steven Spielberg, Common, Mark Hamill, Kerry Washington, also Magic Johnson, Danny Trejo, Rosario Dawson, and John Legend. There was a tweet from Kerry Washington here. There is no doubt in my mind that Karen Bass LA is the leader this city needs and deserves. I'm voting for her, and I hope you will too. There's a picture of Kerry Washington alongside Karen Bass, both also smiling. Quote, congratulations to our mayor-elect, unquote, Legend tweeted in response to Bass' victory. Angelenos chose someone who has devoted her life to helping her community become healthier, safer, and more just, unquote. So, since I evidently like her so much, and since I'm happy she was elected, why did I entitle this stream Bass Victorious Are We? The reason why is that we live within a system that is now largely controlled by the big money. And the only way for Karen Bass to get in there right now in this system we had now was to accept some of that big money, which she did along the way. She didn't do this on small donations alone. She was practical. She took some of the big money. I'm not going to sting her too hard for that because I'm real glad she won. And for some reason, I have personal confidence in her. I suppose it's a vibe. I think she's going to be a real good mayor. I'm only sorry that she did not, that she's not now the vice president of the United States. But the point that I'm making is that it took a huge amount of money, $100 million roughly. Well, I don't know if she spent $100 million. She was outspent by 11-1, but she still spent a huge amount of money to become the mayor of Los Angeles. If we had the system we've been talking about in place, where the big money was gone, much of that money, especially small dollar donations, might have been used for other races in California, because Rick Caruso, if he was running, would automatically have been disqualified by the voters. No one would have voted for him because he was the personification of toxic money. Karen Bass would have won by a wide margin, and a lot of people's small donation money would have been available for other progressive candidates in California. So while this was a victory for us in the context of the present system, the real victory for us would have been if we had built this movement where everybody comes together and says no to toxic money by saying no to the candidates who were using that toxic money. So, I look at this through the lens of where I think we need to go. And I regret that we were not able to build the campaign that would have made toxic money poisonous but this year. And I hope that during the next 2 years, we'll be able to make that campaign a reality so we can get rid of the toxic money in politics once and for all. So thank you for listening to this. Okay, I'm going to attend to your comments. Steve says, I got off work early. I'm real glad you did get off work early, Steve. Kay says, my roommate just got fired from his part-time job. We are screwed. Shake my head. I'm so sorry to hear that, Kay. So sorry to hear that. Steve Wolfbrandt said, sorry to hear that, Kay. Kay said, so is he and me too. Steve Wolfbrandt said, at least Hunter will be investigated now. Silver lining. Steve says, Kay, maybe you can find a new job, but right away. There are many jobs open here. You mean in Los Angeles? I'm afraid Kay is far away. Steve Wolfbrandt says, AOC, perhaps the minority leader. No, I don't think there's a chance in hell of that, Steve. I think AOC is very popular with the people still, in spite of the fact that a lot of the lefties we run with don't think very much of her right now. But we're not voting. It's the other Congress people who are voting. I think AOC would be completely unacceptable to the right part of the caucus. She won't be able to unite the caucus. I think the Democrats are going to be looking for someone who has friends on the right and who has friends on the left and who has friends in the middle of the caucus. For me, that person is Debbie Dingell or Rosa DeLauro, maybe Jamie Raskin, Katie Porter. I think Katie Porter is maybe the furthest left, except maybe for Barbara Lee. I didn't mention Barbara before, but I think she is well liked, certainly by the center of the caucus and the left part of the caucus, very well liked, including by AOC, who greatly admires her. But I don't think Barbara Lee is really acceptable on the right. And again, I think Democrats are going to be looking for someone who is persona grata in all segments of the congressional party. Kay says, I hope so, Steve. Steve says, Bass was involved in scandals at USC and Scientology. Yeah, I know that. Steve says, Bass is more of the same. This city needs to try something else. It's a mess here. Steve says, I've been all over Cuba a couple of times, even studied at the University of Havana. Steve says Caruso would have won with his own money and wouldn't have owed any favors to anyone. He wouldn't have owed any favors to anyone, but he might have bestowed a lot of favors on himself. I mean, look at Trump. He was running with his own money too. As soon as he got in, he started taking all kinds of favors that were in violation of the Constitution. In violation of two clauses in the Constitution. Having your own money doesn't mean you will not be corrupt. That's a lesson we should have learned long ago. That we certainly should have learned during the last 6 years. Kay says, see you all later. Still, Steve says, bye, Kay. Steve says, good luck, Kay. Okay, folks, thank you for coming. I will be back at 9 p.m. Please do visit my Patreon site or my Buy Me a Coffee site. I would appreciate both. They're on the screen right now. Patreon.com/Joe_Firestone and buymeacoffee.com /Joe.Firestone. I agree, Steve. Taking money from corporations means you will be corrupt. But there are degrees of corruption. And the question is whether the personal corruption of Rick Caruso is greater than the corruption that Karen Bass engages in. And that means to me, from my point of view, okay, I think that Karen Bass is preferable to Caruso. And I'm very glad she won. Steve Wolfbrand says, I'm going to Hardlands Media. Okay. Say hello to Kit for me. That's all for this stream, folks. I'll see you at 9 p.m., hopefully.